All right, here we are, back again to deliver you some more golden nuggets.
Beautiful, dude.
It's
been a little
how
bit of
you
time.
been doing, James?
Yeah, I've been perfect, my friend. I've missed doing this podcast, but other than that, I've been very good.
Oh, I'm loving that. I'm so glad to hear it. No, but seriously, you've been doing a ton of writing on this wiki. Well, okay, so just explain it. Have we talked about that on the podcast?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so just explain what that is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, I've been doing a bunch of writing for a while now, probably a year and a half. I mean, that's just kind of natural. In the process of doing Super Memo, eventually you start writing like your own thoughts and observations and sort of recording them in topics and stuff like that. And then sort of the reason I didn't publish them earlier was that it was just so inconvenient to work on something in Super Memo and then export it as HTML and then upload it to something. Right. I also made the terrible mistake of trying to write my own blog, and that was just a disaster because I'm not very good at web development at all. And you know, the friction of having to like copy the HTML, log into a server with just like the terminal and the command line, and then like paste it into the database. It was just ridiculous.
Dude, that is insane.
Yeah, it was just stupid.
Insane.
So basically what I did is I stumbled across Obsidian because this very smart friend of mine, you know, he'd been recommending it for a while, and you know, I kind of ignored him everything he was saying, and eventually I gave in and I gave it a go. And I found that Obsidian makes...
He sounds like a really great guy.
Yeah.
We should get together and have a chat.
I think you would like that guy, yeah. Anyway, I tried Obsidian and I found that, you know, just the ability to quickly switch between articles, to create those hyperlinks really easily, it was just so much smoother. And I found a way to, you know, synchronize everything with Git so that I could just push from my... Obsidian Vault to Git and it would upload into my wiki, which was so convenient. And there were just a couple of days where literally all I did every day was just write, because now I had the ability to. I was getting really weird tingling sensations in my pinky finger, especially from it was like I've never been that into writing, and then suddenly I was doing it like 10 hours a day. So yeah, anyway, I think it's just a really great way to crystallize your thoughts. That's one of the things that I noticed. Like, it's great for idea generation and just really crystallizing why you believe a certain thing. So I've been doing a ton of writing, and I'm definitely going to keep doing it in the future. But yeah,
dude, that's fantastic, and I agree completely with everything you said. I just want to touch on a bunch of points. The friction thing. People so severely underestimate what can happen as a result of even a little bit of friction. If you want to do something more, reducing friction as much as possible is crucial. And just by reducing friction, you'll just end up doing something more. So yeah, I think any kind of, what would you say? Frictionful? I don't know. Yeah. Any process that has a bunch of friction is less likely to occur with any degree of frequency. So I think that's absolutely right on. And another cool thing about Obsidian, like you mentioned, it's just markdown files, and so you can technically do anything you want with them. You can put them in a Git repo, you can do whatever, and easy to back up. They're all private, so Obsidian is really cool that way, and I think that's awesome. And another thing, two things. One, do you feel when you're doing a lot of writing, do you feel like it makes you smarter? Not permanently, but while you're in that writing mode, let's say for a week, do you feel smarter? Because I do.
It seems to, you know, once you've built up a little bit of momentum over a couple of days, it seems that over the next few days, you're much more fluent in terms of your writing and perhaps even your thinking as well, because it's just, I don't know, often when I think, I'm only thinking in terms of like 10-word sentences or whatever.
Right.
If that makes sense. But then when you have to compose an article, you have to compose it in terms of sentences, then paragraphs, chapters, and then entire article. And that sort of process of structuring like your thinking is really good for your brain, I think. Yeah.
Dude, I completely agree. And it's the weirdest thing. You mentioned only thinking in 10-word sentences. when you're trying to work on a difficult problem, if you don't write it all down, you just keep starting from zero almost. You know what I mean? Like, if it's the only thing you're thinking about, it's possible to make progress, assuming it's some sort of limited complexity. But if something is sufficiently complex, at least for me, I have to write it down. And what's weird is this takes some self-reflection to realize. It's like Jerry Seinfeld, I heard him on a podcast mention how creative people, they think that that's all you need. You're just born that way and that's it. But you have to learn how to harness it. He likened it to being given a black stallion. It's like you have to learn how to ride it. It's not just default. You know what I mean? And so I thought that's interesting. You have to learn how to get the most and the best from yourself on a consistent basis. And so for me, discovering that I had to write things was a really important thing. Plus, these recent notions, they're not particularly recent, but they become in the zeitgeist, so to say, of evergreen notes, or some people call them Zettels or permanent notes, and this whole idea of a Zettelkasten, this kind of thing. Like, the way these notes are structured is so distinct from ordinary notes in the way that people take them, just jotting down what other people say or stuff they read or whatever. And the way they're structured conceptually and atomically and all this allows you to build much more complex patterns of thinking and figure out much more complex problems. So all those things have been hugely valuable for me, and I totally agree about writing. But also, I wanted to ask, do you think that typing speed is an impediment to creativity? And I mean that seriously, because, like, let's assume you could type at 120 words a minute. When you have words or phrases or ideas that you want to get out, the friction of it, to go back to that, is much less than if your typing speed is 50 or 60.
Exactly. You know, there are people in the Discord who have mocked me mercilessly for my slow typing speed, and they have shown themselves to be able to improve their typing speed extremely quickly, making me look like a fool. But actually, I did catch myself at some point over the past month thinking, you know, just in a moment of weakness, I thought, oh man, it'd be so good if I could type faster, because I would be able to keep up with my train of thought. And then I thought, oh no, fuck, I hope Val doesn't ever read my memories. But no, I think I do agree that, you know, in the ideal case, you would be able to type as fast as you could think, because I do think that has a huge benefit. But maybe if you're not a full-time writer, maybe it isn't worth doing. I don't know, actually. What do you think? Do you think it's worth investing time in?
To be honest, I think it probably is, because it's not just that it makes it take less time to get your thoughts out. I actually think it's a kind of interruption. To have to slowly type something out, it's a kind of interruption, because you should have already moved on to thinking something else.
Yeah.
But now, because you're still trying to type something, you're interrupting yourself. So it's not just that it takes longer, but you're actually reducing the quality of your output in some way, I think. I don't know that that's true, but it feels that way.
Yeah.
And you know, the funny part about the slow typing speed, your slow typing speed, is that I have a slow typing speed as well, but I just don't mention it. And so people don't make fun of me for it. Even though I mentioned it a couple of times, nobody brings it up.
Well, the thing
is... But
is...
anyway, I guess Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, we're cursed because, you know, Nice literally has probably one of the world's, like, he's probably in the top 0.1% of people. I mean, his typing speed is absolutely absurd. Whenever he does those typing challenges, they have to, like, check that he's not hacking every time he has to do those tests. It's like, I don't know, do you know what his speed is? Because it is completely absurd.
I think it's 140 words a minute or even more. I'm not particularly sure.
That is nuts. Yeah. But
it's insane, dude. But here's the thing. My excuse is, I never, like, took a computer class or anything where I just learned how to, like, I just had been using a computer ever since I was a little kid. And when you're a little kid, nobody says, put your fingers like this on the keyboard.
Yeah.
And so I just developed my own method of typing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't use all my fingers all the time, but I use a bunch of them, and I don't look at the keyboard when I'm typing, but I could improve a lot. I don't know what my speed is. Maybe 70 words or 80 words a minute. I'm not sure, but I could improve a lot if I actually learned to use all of my fingers.
Yeah. I think it's good as well from standpoint of like keeping your fingers healthy, because I did notice even in that week when I was doing like a heavy amount of typing, like my fingers were hurting. I could feel like the pain, and obviously Raj has like struggled with like RSI and stuff like that, and it's like I don't want to subject myself to that as well. But yeah, there was something.
Yeah, that would never happen to me. I'm just too powerful.
Invincible.
So, yeah,
it's because of your healthy diet, my friend. That's what's keeping you
That's
strong.
right. Dude, a guy like me with my kind of diet, my kind of exercise and sleep regimen, dude, what do you think? I'm gonna be burdened by hand pain? I don't think so. Get out of here.
All right, I want to briefly go back to the friction thing, because I wanted to say more good things about Obsidian, but also I have a wild card coming at the end. So, firstly, about Obsidian, I developed a plugin for Obsidian, which is like an incremental writing plugin.
Oh yes.
So it's you can add your notes, and you can even add like just individual paragraphs to an incremental writing queue, and then just have them scheduled very simply. It's just based on like the A-factor topic scheduling in SuperMemo, which is very simple. It's nothing like the item scheduling, which is much more complex. And I found the process of writing that plugin was just very easy, because the Obsidian people have built it from the ground up to be extensible, and so it's just a really good experience in that sense. Also, they have an amazing community of people on Discord who will help you if you literally have any question. Like, I posted a couple of questions when I was writing that plugin, just about how to structure my code and stuff like that, and there were people like reviewing my code for me, giving me a bunch of tips and stuff like that, and it's just a great experience. And yeah, just writing in Obsidian is really good. So that's like the low friction side of things being kind of a positive, right? Do you think that having a little bit of friction sometimes can be a good thing? And one of the examples that immediately came to my head was linking, because the sort of the style of linking in SuperMemo is very different from the style of linking in Obsidian. In SuperMemo, there's actually, almost a needlessly large amount of friction to link anything. In Obsidian, it's like effortless. There's a hotkey and everything. It's all set up. There's a fuzzy finder so that you can link things extremely quickly. And my thought was, I always wonder whether WOS deliberately makes it kind of have a little bit of friction to link things. I wonder if there's a little bit of 4D chess going on there, a 400 IQ move on there, because basically by including a little bit of friction, you're sort of forced to only link things when the quality of the link is extremely high. In Obsidian, you, especially since I'm writing like a public wiki where I'm wanting to explain my thought process, I'm often doing links that are kind of obvious to me, that are kind of like low value, just linking to like my contact me page or whatever. So basically what I'm getting at is that perhaps through increasing the friction, WOS is trying to get you to increase the average quality of the links, to sort of boost the creative process, because the links that are most likely to give you deep creative associative insights are going to be those ones that that you're going to be willing to make, even though the cost of linking is a little bit high, and you're going to filter out all of those low quality links that you won't make because there's a little bit of inconvenience associated with making it. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I definitely see what you mean, but I disagree basically at every level. Okay. Because look at it from a cognitive science perspective. How many times do you think of something related to what is happening now that is totally useless? Your brain doesn't care about the quality of a link. It's just finding associations between things, and the more you have, the more creativity you have. And so I actually think one of the points is to make low quality links. Like, some of them are low quality, some of them are high quality. And I also think you develop an intuition for what's worth linking when, like, just over time. It's similar to how you develop an intuition for what's worth extracting and what's worth making an item out of. I think you start out making way too many links to stupid words like experience or what, stupid stuff like that. And then eventually you sort of titrate it and you get to a better spot. But also, we're talking about a guy who made it so that 0 is the highest priority because it's easier to type one number than 2 or 3 numbers. Like, this is not a guy who's a fan of friction to avoid doing something that's not that important. Like, this guy, I don't know why he made the linking the way it is. I don't think he intended that as a use case. And to be honest, you couldn't even design something worse than it if you tried to. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Woz here. It's super hard to design good software. And I've designed stuff that's just as bad or worse before. And I totally get it. And it's probably an unintended use case. So I can totally understand why it would be neglected. And I don't blame him at all for it. But I truly don't even know how it could get any worse. Without being comical about the stuff you introduced to make it worse, I don't know that you can make it any worse. It's awful, dude.
You have to put in your password every time you make a link or something. I still think, dude,
that would be the only thing you could do that would be worse than right now.
I'm still gonna I'm not sure how I feel. I could still see there being that being the rationale behind this whole link thing, because there is a similar concept in social science, I guess, in the science of social networks. There's this concept of the strength of weak ties. I don't know if you heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard that phrase, but I'm not too familiar with it.
It's basically like if you have a friend group, the relationship between each person in the group would be described as a strong tie, because you're closely associated with that person. You probably share interests, you share opinions, maybe you work in the same place, you're co-workers or whatever. The strength of weak ties refers to the notion that the sort of fleeting relationships that you have with people, where it's you kind of know them, they're on your LinkedIn page or whatever, and or you have their email and maybe you've interacted once before, but you're not that close. Those relationships are a lot more valuable, because through them you can gain access to opportunities that exist completely outside of your strong tie social network, right? So the idea is is it the case that associations you make sort of follow the same logic, where rather than having all of these, if your collection contains a bunch of these lower quality links, obvious links, will you waste time on those when you could be only traversing the links between the links which are high quality, which are non-obvious, if you know what I mean? And would you gain more from that?
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely see what you mean. It's just, I feel like obviously there is a level where it's too much. Don't make that many links where it's just insane and everything is linked to everything else. I totally agree with that. However, I think that level is higher than most people would assume. And also, the way that people talk about Roam and Obsidian and Evergreen Notes and second brain systems, it's disgusting, dude. It's the most boring stuff. I tweeted a thread about this the other day. The way that people employ two extremely powerful tools, which in the tweet thread I mentioned, spaced repetition and note-taking, is so boring. The common use cases of them are so boring. I was trying to watch Roam or Obsidian videos, and watching people, and again, I don't mean any disrespect. I could see how I would explain something powerful in a really mundane way like this. But watching people try to explain, well, it's really cool because you're writing and then you link it to what it's related to. That way, later on, you can come back to it and you can see all the related stuff. It's you're describing it in the worst possible way. And plus, you're also talking about this dumb second brain thing. Who cares about that? That is the most boring use of anything. A second brain? Get out of here, dude. If something is worth knowing, and I mentioned this on the Twitter thread, there are effective ways to get it into your brain. And no amount of backlinks, no network of backlinks will ever be good enough to replace your memory and the brain's natural ability to associate with what's already inside your skull. Okay? If something's worth knowing, put it in your brain. Don't put it in a second brain. I like my first one good enough. Thank you very much. And it's so boring the way that people talk about this. I'm excited, super excited about tools like Rome and Obsidian. I've even changed my mind about Rome. I think Rome is great.
Oh.
And I'm super excited about Obsidian. And I'm super excited about all these ideas, Evergreen Notes, all this. But I'm so bored by the way that people talk about this. And it's the same thing with space repetition. It's so boring and disheartening when people talk about, oh, I made items from this. They look like this. And it's about the most basic, surface level facts, sometimes insights from the source material. It's so ridiculous, dude. There's such a better use of it. And people talk about the most boring aspect of it possible. And I'm just so, oh my God, dude, I want to take a nap. Come on. Say some better stuff. Do something more interesting. I understand it's difficult. But you got a super powerful tool here, and you're doing nothing with it. It's like, it's outrageous, dude. It's outrageous.
All right. Let me pose this question to you. What aspects of space repetition or maybe even both, and like these second brain sort of things, do you think people should be focusing on rather than what they are currently focusing on?
At the end of the tweet thread, I mentioned that the commonality between those two problems, the poor use of space repetition, the poor use of note taking, is at least one commonality is lack of focus on applicability.
Yeah.
And so I think that is one thing that you should focus on. The stuff that you put in there should be applicable. You should be using it. It should provide some value to your life. It should not be knowledge hoarding. It should not be just in case one day. Okay, we're not squirrels preparing for the winter here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And at least the squirrels will definitely use the stuff they store. Okay? What we're trying to do here is be more effective in life and have a better life, lead a more meaningful, capable life. Right? Everybody agrees on that. So learn stuff, make items about, and I understand that I'm being kind of annoying with the way I'm talking about this. I understand that. And I'm doing that almost deliberately because I'm just so sick of it. But anyway, the way that people talk about this space repetition stuff, and we talked about this before, they're so focused on nonsense stuff like, oh, I've remembered all the capitals, or I've remembered all the flags, or I downloaded a 10,000 word deck and I'm going to go through every word. It's like, that stuff doesn't matter. Focus on stuff that's actually improving your life, making you able to do more things, actually applicable in day-to-day life. So I think that's one key piece. And another key piece, especially in terms of the note-taking systems themselves, is to focus on insight generation for yourself, your own insights. Don't just copy what other people have written. So often I see people who do these close reading techniques, which are just amazingly boring. They do these close reading techniques where they copy so many quotes directly from the source and just paste it in and just paste it in, just paste it in. There's so much there. And they have this whole system like, oh, first I break it into this and then I break it into this. It's like, it's ridiculous, dude. Just read and learn stuff. And then as you capture insights, focus on your own insights, not on just copying what other people have already talked about. That's so boring and unimaginative and pretty much useless, at least in my eyes. Whatever, you can do whatever you want if that's helpful to you. I understand, I totally get it, but that's just not what I would do, and it seems like I don't see the benefit of it. And I've asked multiple people, what do you do with something like Rome? What does it allow you to do that you couldn't do before? And the answer describes the features. Oh, I can link things together. Okay, great. So of your links, what insight have you generated as a result of it? And it's like, it's always nothing. I literally haven't heard one person that I've personally spoken to tell me an insight that they had as a result of traversing their Rome or Obsidian links. Like, it's always just, oh, it's so cool. But then when you get down to it, it's nothing. And by the way, I mentioned this in the tweet thread as well. These close reading techniques, they take so long that my primary concern is that it will be so draining of enthusiasm and energy that over the long term, you'll actually learn less than somebody with an approach that has no note-taking at all. Because it takes so long to do, you'll be so low enthusiasm, so low energy, because the friction of that process is so high that you'll just end up consuming less content in the first place. And even if you get more value per unit, you're still consuming less units and not enough to overcome somebody who has never taken a note in their process. They just read and and try to learn that way.
Yeah, that's really an essential point, and I want to come back to what you ranted about as well, because I have another good question as well. But just on the cost of close reading, I think this is a point that people miss. Like, whenever you assess how useful a learning technique is going to be, you can't just go by the value, and you can't just go by the cost by themselves. You have to integrate them and go by value and cost, because even the most valuable sort of learning technique, if its cost is high enough, then it's useless to you, because you could spend an entire lifetime doing it and not actually get the value or whatever, if you know what I mean. So it's just
exactly.
It's just like in, I don't know, like microeconomics or something. When you want to buy a good, the value to you might be very high, but if the cost is very high, it's no good to you, is it?
Right, exactly.
And
it's not only that. I just have one other note on that. Right now, if you're listening to this and there's a learning technique that you want to employ, but it seems difficult enough that you're actually not doing any learning, just ignore it. Just don't do anything. Just read. Just watch a video. Don't take notes. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry about remembering. Just read. Just watch. Just listen. Do whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. If you don't feel like reading, listen to an audiobook. Do whatever. Because curiosity is accelerative. And so once you get going, you'll want to learn more and more and more things. And it's better to learn some stuff without notes than to learn less stuff or no stuff with notes. Like, dude, who cares? It doesn't matter. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm just reminded of this paper in machine learning, and I hope I'm not misinterpreting what it was actually about, but it was called The Bitter Lesson, or A Bitter Lesson, or something like that. And it was about how, the big advances in machine learning and AI over the past decades have mostly come from an increase in the quantity of the data rather than the quality of the algorithms. So it's like the bitter lesson is that quantity has outperformed quality, if you know what I mean. So
right, exactly.
Rather than focusing on the value, people have just been focusing on, maximizing the amount of stuff that they take in as a way to,
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
If you learn enough stuff, your brain will give you something useful for it. And you don't need to take notes to do that. It'll do it automatically. It just takes time. Admittedly, it's less effective per unit. But if it's easier to do, you'll do sufficiently more of it to overcome that deficit, especially compared to someone whose system is really arduous.
So I just want to briefly go back to what you were saying a couple of minutes ago. I know we've only got time for a really quick session today. I'm sorry, guys, but you were talking about like how people are focusing on the sort of low value, kind of boring aspects of both space repetition and this second brain sort of stuff.
Right.
How much of that do you think is influenced by sort of imitation? So people, when they want to use these tools, they go online and they try and find the people who are using these tools and what they are recommending people to do and how to use the tools and stuff like that. And what they find is that, the people who have sort of built up a platform and are producing content about this stuff, they tend to be sort of productivity guru types who are experts in the note-taking system, but they don't necessarily have like a serious context of use, as Andy puts it. So
right, exactly.
Do you think that, just imitation accounts for the things that we see? Do you think that, let's say if the internet didn't exist and you couldn't go online and see how people are using these tools at the moment, and you just gave it to someone and said, explore this tool and use it for its, try and use it in the most valuable way that you can. Do you think that if you did that to 100 people, would they end up using it in exactly the same way as you see people doing it today? Or would they be using it for more valuable things because they hadn't been just imitating the people that they saw? Do you know? Is that making sense?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. And first of all, I just want to say, I have nothing personally against these people who talk about note-taking and how to do it best and this kind of thing. And that's what their job is, to tell you how to take notes and how to build a second brain. And like this guy I'm thinking of, Tiago Forte, I think he has a I don't know, a course or something on building a second brain. I have not personally taken it myself. Maybe it's good. I don't know. But I will say my intuitive sense, my gut reaction is, I don't want to hear about how to get insight from somebody whose job it is to find out how to take notes. I don't think that's just, you're not the type of person for me. And again, I'm sure Tiago and these other guys, I don't really know any of the other ones. I'm sure they're nice guys, and I'm sure they're actually really smart, and I'm sure people I'm being serious. I really am sure that a lot of people get a lot of value from their stuff. So I don't mean to be disrespectful. But to me, that's just like a really boring use case for people to say, oh yeah, I'm a productivity guru, so you should listen to me about how to write notes and generate insight. It's like, what are you generating insight about? Like, I just don't understand it, dude. Like, you're talking about notes. But anyway, that's that.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
It reminds me of Niklas Luhmann, who was the guy who came up with the Zettelkasten system, and he was renowned as being extremely prolific, writing like 70 books and over 400 academic articles or something insane like that.
Right.
But his writing about the Zettelkasten system was like reserved to like a footnote relative to the rest of his prolific writing. Like,
exactly, dude.
And just sort of extending on that, I was just saying today in a conversation with some other people that, you know, one of the projects that I'm really interested in is learning in public, and how sharing your learning and how you learn can can cause people to become more interested in free learning and learning meaningful things rather than just focusing on trivia and stuff like that. And I was talking about how the biggest risk to a public learner is just becoming a productivity guru, because that's exactly the thing that you don't want to. That's like the situation we have now that you want to improve upon. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the problem is that learning should be a means, not an end in and of itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you become a productivity guru or a knowledge management guru or whatever, you've made learning into the end. And it's like, it should be a means to do something else. Like, learning should help you do other stuff, not just learn more and more to continue learning more. Like, I don't know. It just seems like really boring to me. But to get back to your question, the imitation thing, I do think that's a large part of it. And I think a large part of, like, for spaced repetition specifically, people use it in really mundane ways, and they're really close-minded about its potential use cases, because there aren't a lot of people. Here, I'll read the tweet. Let me find it really quickly. So, here we go. The closed-mindedness, and I'm referring to about the potential use cases of spaced repetition, is probably largely due to the fact that there are very few high achievers in conceptual fields who are publicly saying, SR helped me a lot with this, and here's how. Maybe that's because there aren't very many such people who could truthfully say that. Whatever the reason, this contributes to a common belief that SR is only useful for basic facts and figures, which reduces the enthusiasm and thinking around more conceptual applications. And I believe that that's largely, as I say, that's largely the cause. There aren't a bunch of people saying, oh man, look at this discovery I made, look at this Nobel I won, all this, and we've talked about this before, and I did it as a result of this. Or, I'm not a note-taking expert, but look at this cool thing I did with this notes that allowed me to advance in my job or understand some complex concept. You know what I mean? Like, we don't see many of that. What we see is, oh, I write a blog about how to take notes and how to read or whatever it is, or how to remember what you read or whatever they talk about. And here's how I organize my Zettelkasten or whatever. It's like, man, that's not... it's just not inspiring.
I agree. And on that note, it's kind of a sad note, somber note. We're going to end it for today, guys. We've not got very much time today, but hopefully this was a golden nugget dense podcast for you, and hopefully we'll be able to stick to a more consistent schedule in the future. Yeah, I think that might be unlikely. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.
See ya.